Evelyn Parker had always loved the sound of rain tapping softly on her windows. It made her small house in Seattle feel warm and safe. That evening, she had just finished her tea when she heard a knock at the door. She wasn't expecting anyone, so the sound startled her. When she opened the door, she froze in surprise. Her nephew, Ethan, stood there, drenched from head to toe, holding a small suitcase and an apologetic smile. "Aunt Evelyn," he said breathlessly, "I'm sorry for showing up like this. I didn't know where else to go." Evelyn quickly pulled him inside before the cold air followed. "Ethan, what on earth are you doing here in this weather?" she asked, grabbing a towel and wrapping it around his shoulders. He looked exhausted, but his eyes still carried the same kindness she remembered from years ago. He explained that he had just moved to Seattle for a new job at a tech company. The apartment he planned to rent wasn't ready, and the hotel nearby had no vacancies. Evelyn's heart softened. Without hesitation, she said, "You'll stay here until you get your place sorted." No arguments. Ethan looked relieved. "Thank you, Aunt Evelyn. I didn't want to bother you, but I didn't know who else to call." "It's no bother," she said firmly. "Your family." After a warm shower and a quick dinner, Ethan finally began to relax. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the soft yellow light making the moment feel peaceful. Evelyn studied him quietly. The last time she had seen him, he had been a teenager, tall but awkward, with wild hair and shy eyes. Now he was a man. His voice was deeper, his presence calmer. There was something grounded about him that surprised her. "You've grown so much," she said with a small smile. "Your father would be proud." Ethan's smile faded slightly. "I think about Dad a lot lately, especially since I started this new chapter." Evelyn felt her chest tighten. Her brother's passing had left a hollow space in both their lives. "He's still with you, Ethan, in everything you do," she said softly. He nodded, his eyes glistening slightly. Then he looked around her cozy living room, noticing the framed photos, the candles, the faint scent of lavender. "This place hasn't changed at all," he said, almost smiling again. "No," she replied, glancing around. "I guess I never needed to change it. It's quiet here, but it's home." As the rain poured outside, Evelyn served them both hot cocoa. The air felt calm, yet something unspoken lingered. Maybe it was the comfort of old memories, or the shared silence of two people who had lost someone they both loved. Whatever it was, it made the evening feel heavier and deeper than she expected. Ethan began telling her about his new job, how he was excited but nervous. City life felt overwhelming at times. Evelyn listened, genuinely proud of him. He spoke with confidence and sincerity, and she could see the man he had become, responsible, determined, gentle. It filled her with pride and a strange ache she couldn't quite explain. When he smiled, his eyes crinkled just like his father's had. It made her heart twist. For a moment, she thought about how much time had passed, how quickly children grow, and how lonely the house had been since her brother's death. Having Ethan there suddenly made the quiet spaces come alive again. Later, after dinner, Ethan offered to wash the dishes, but Evelyn waved him off. "You've had a long day. Go rest." He nodded and thanked her again for letting him stay. "You've always been the kindest person in the family," he said sincerely. The words caught her off guard. She smiled faintly, feeling a warmth rise in her chest. "I just do what's right," she said. But deep down, the compliment touched her more than she wanted to admit. After he went to his room, Evelyn walked around the house, turning off the lights. The rain outside had softened into a steady drizzle. She passed by the guest room door and paused. She could hear faint movement Ethan settling into bed. For a brief moment, she felt a mix of emotions: care, protectiveness, and something softer, harder to define. It wasn't wrong, but it was confusing. Maybe it was just the loneliness talking, the echo of quiet years spent alone. Evelyn sighed and went to her room. She tried reading but couldn't focus. Her thoughts kept drifting back to Ethan, how grown he looked. How kind his voice was. How his smile carried both youth and sadness. She wasn't sure why it affected her so much. Maybe because he was a piece of her brother, a part of the family she still had. Maybe it was just the comfort of having someone close again after so long. Hours passed. The house was quiet except for the sound of rain and the ticking clock. She finally closed her eyes, ready to sleep, when she heard a low sound, a soft groan coming from down the hall. Her heart jumped. She listened again. It was faint, but clear. She got out of bed, slipped on her robe, and walked toward the guest room. "Ethan," she called gently through the half-open door. "Are you all right?" There was a pause. Then his voice came, slightly strained. "Yeah, I think I pulled something in my back earlier today. It's nothing serious." Evelyn frowned. "Did you lift something heavy?" "Yeah, a few boxes at work. It's just sore." She hesitated. "Do you want me to bring you something? Maybe a heating pad?" He chuckled lightly. "You really don't have to, Aunt Evelyn. I'll be fine." But she could hear the discomfort in his voice. She sighed and said, "All right, but if it hurts in the morning, you tell me. Don't be stubborn like your dad was." That made him laugh softly. "Okay, I promise." Evelyn smiled faintly and returned to her room. But sleep didn't come easily. She kept thinking about how fragile he had sounded, how alone he must have felt moving to a new city, trying to prove himself. She wanted to help him, not just as an aunt, but as someone who cared deeply about his happiness. As she lay there listening to the rain, Evelyn realized that life sometimes surprises you in ways you don't expect. One moment you're living your quiet, predictable days, and the next, someone walks through your door and reminds you what it feels like to care, to feel alive again. She didn't know that this small act of kindness, letting her nephew stay, would soon open the door to emotions she hadn't faced in years. It wouldn't be wrong or forbidden, but it would test her heart in ways she never imagined. For now, she only knew one thing. Something had shifted inside her, something she couldn't name yet. And as she closed her eyes, the sound of rain felt different, softer, deeper, almost like a promise that the days ahead were about to change. And in that quiet, peaceful night, the story of Evelyn and Ethan truly began. The next morning, Evelyn woke up early and went to the kitchen to make breakfast. The smell of coffee filled the air, and soft sunlight slipped through the curtains. She felt oddly peaceful, almost cheerful, until she heard a faint sound behind her. She turned and saw Ethan walking in, his hand on his lower back, moving carefully as if every step hurt. "Morning," he said with a small smile, trying to hide the discomfort. Evelyn frowned. "Ethan, you're walking funny. Is your back still hurting?" He tried to laugh it off. "Just a little sore. I probably twisted it yesterday while carrying boxes at work." "Sit down," she said quickly. "You shouldn't move around like that." Ethan did as she said, but when he bent slightly to sit, he winced in pain. Evelyn's expression softened with concern. "That's not just sore, honey. You really hurt yourself." "It's not a big deal, Aunt Evelyn. It'll get better." But she wasn't convinced. She remembered her late brother having similar muscle pain years ago. "I used to help your father when he had back tension," she said, her voice calm and caring. "A light massage helped him recover faster. Maybe it could help you too." Ethan hesitated, clearly unsure. "I don't want to trouble you. I'll take some medicine and rest." "It's no trouble," she insisted gently. "I know what I'm doing. Just sit still." He finally agreed, mostly because he trusted her. Evelyn fetched some oil from the cabinet, simple lavender oil she used for her own sore joints. She warmed it slightly between her palms, then gestured for him to sit on the edge of the couch. "Turn around," she said softly. Ethan obeyed, sitting with his back to her. She began pressing lightly on his shoulders, testing the pressure. "Does this hurt?" she asked. He exhaled slowly. "No, actually, that feels really good." The room was quiet except for the gentle sound of rain outside and the clock ticking in the corner. Evelyn worked carefully, her hands moving in smooth circles. She felt his muscles tense under her touch, then gradually relax. She was focused, careful, her movements steady and caring. "You've been overworking yourself," she said. "You need to take care of your body, Ethan." "I know," he replied with a faint chuckle. "You sound just like Dad." Her heart warmed. "That's a compliment," she said softly. "Your father never listened either." Ethan smiled. He would have been proud of you, you know? You've always been the strong one." The words caught her off guard. For a moment, she stopped moving. "Proud of me?" she asked quietly. "Yeah," he said. "You've kept everything together after he passed. I don't think I ever told you this, but you were like a second mom to me." Evelyn swallowed hard, emotions rising unexpectedly. She took a deep breath and continued massaging, focusing again on his shoulders. "You're kind to say that," she said, her voice slightly shaky. The closeness between them felt heavier now, not wrong, just emotional. It was strange how comfort could feel so intense. She looked at the curve of his neck, the way he trusted her completely, sitting there without a trace of hesitation. It made her heart ache not with desire, but with the deep tenderness of connection and memory. After a while, she asked, "Better?" Ethan nodded. "Much better." "You're really good at this?" She smiled faintly. "Years of experience. I used to take care of your dad and your grandma, too. Guess I became the family nurse." He laughed softly. "Well, I owe you big time. I was in real pain earlier." Evelyn wiped her hands with a towel, still feeling a warmth in her chest. "You don't owe me anything. Just promise to take it easy for a few days." He turned around, facing her now. His eyes met hers, calm but grateful. "You're too kind, Aunt Evelyn. You always take care of everyone but yourself." She blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're always alone here. You spend your time helping others, but who looks after you?" Evelyn looked away, pretending to busy herself with the oil bottle. "I managed just fine." He didn't push further, but the question stayed in the air like a quiet echo. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the rain against the windows. Then Ethan smiled, breaking the tension. "Anyway, that really helped. I can finally breathe again." "I'm glad," she said, forcing a small smile. "Now go lie down and rest. I'll make something for lunch later." "All right," he said. But as he stood, she noticed the faint trace of gratitude and something softer in his eyes. When he left the room, Evelyn sank into the couch, her heart pounding quietly. She had done nothing wrong, yet her emotions were tangled. It had been so long since anyone had needed her, trusted her, or looked at her that way with warmth, respect, and gratitude. She wasn't thinking anything improper. What she felt was more complicated and ached for connection, for meaning, for someone to share her quiet days with. She realized how lonely she had been, how empty the house felt when she was alone with her thoughts. As she cleaned up, her mind kept replaying his words. "Who looks after you?" It was such a simple question, yet it hit something deep inside her. For years, she had been the caretaker, the dependable one. No one had asked how she felt in a long time. That night, she tried to distract herself by reading, but her mind wouldn't settle. Every small sound reminded her of him, the soft thud of his footsteps, the faint creak of the floorboards. She wasn't drawn to him in a wrong way. She just felt close to him in a way she hadn't expected. At one point, she got up to check if he was asleep. His door was slightly open, and she could see him lying on his side, fast asleep, breathing calmly. The faint light from the hallway fell across his face, and for a second, she saw not the man he was now, but the boy he used to be, the one she used to babysit, who used to run to her when he scraped his knee. Her eyes softened. Time had moved so fast. He had grown up, and she had grown older. Yet somehow, sitting there watching him, she realized that the bond between them had never faded. It had simply changed form. She whispered a quiet prayer for him, then slowly closed the door. Back in her room, Evelyn lay awake, thinking about this strange feeling in her chest. It wasn't attraction, it was affection mixed with longing. The kind of feeling that reminded her she was still human, still capable of warmth and care. She thought about how quickly life could bring unexpected emotions. She had only wanted to help him, yet that small act of kindness had stirred something inside her, a reminder that hearts never truly grow old. As the night deepened, Evelyn told herself to let it go, to stay calm and collected. But she also knew one truth she couldn't deny. The house no longer felt as empty as it once did. Something had shifted quietly, gently and completely, and neither of them would be able to ignore it for long. The days that followed were calm but filled with an energy Evelyn couldn't quite explain. Ethan's back had improved, and the easy rhythm of living together had settled in. They shared morning coffee, talked about work, and watched TV in the evenings. On the surface, everything seemed ordinary, but underneath, something had changed. The house felt warmer now. The air between them carried an unspoken closeness, quiet but undeniable. Ethan often helped her with small chores, fixing a loose kitchen cabinet, changing a light bulb, or carrying groceries from the car. Each time he smiled and said, "See, Aunt Evelyn, you don't have to do everything alone." His words always touched her. She had spent so many years doing things by herself that she'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone care enough to help. One evening, after a long day, they sat together by the fireplace. The rain had returned, steady and soft against the windows. Evelyn had made hot chocolate for both of them. The dim light of the fire cast gentle shadows across the room. It felt peaceful, almost too quiet. Ethan broke the silence first. "You know, I've been thinking a lot lately," he said, his voice thoughtful, "about how people drift apart. How family sometimes becomes just a word." Evelyn looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" He leaned back on the couch. "I guess I realized how long it's been since I've really talked to anyone in my family. You're the only one I feel close to. When Dad passed, everything changed. I stopped calling people. I just built walls, I guess." Evelyn's heart softened. "You were young, Ethan. Losing a parent does that. It makes you feel like you're standing alone, even when people are around." He nodded slowly. "You understand that better than anyone." She didn't answer right away. The truth was, she did. Losing her brother had been one of the hardest moments of her life. For years, she had pushed her feelings aside, focusing on work, on helping others, on staying busy. But when Ethan came back into her life, all those emotions resurfaced. The love, the loss, the longing for connection. "You remind me of him," she said quietly. "Your father. The way you speak, the way you listen, even the way you think before you answer. Sometimes it feels like he's still here, through you." Ethan smiled sadly. "That means a lot. I always wanted to be like him." For a long moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled softly, filling the silence. Evelyn glanced at Ethan and saw something in his eyes' warmth. Gratitude and a deep affection that went beyond simple family love. It wasn't romantic in the wrong sense, but it was deeply emotional. The kind of connection that comes when two souls understand each other. She felt her heart stir. Not with desire, but with the rare ache of being seen and cared for. She had spent years hiding behind polite smiles and quiet routines. Now, here was someone who noticed her, who asked about her day, who made her laugh again. "I'm really lucky you took me in," Ethan said softly. "I didn't realize how much I needed this, just being around someone who feels like home." Evelyn smiled faintly, trying to steady her voice. "You've brought life back into this house. I didn't know how quiet it had become until you arrived." Their eyes met, and for a second, neither of them looked away. It wasn't wrong, it was simply human. Two lonely hearts finding warmth in each other's presence. The air felt heavier, filled with emotions neither of them dared to speak. Ethan broke the silence. "You know something? You're stronger than anyone I've ever met. You've lived alone, kept your life steady, helped everyone around you. How do you do it?" Evelyn gave a small laugh. "I don't know if it's strength. Maybe it's just habit. When you get used to being alone, you learn to survive quietly." He looked at her with genuine concern. "But don't you ever feel lonely?" The question hit her harder than she expected. She opened her mouth to answer, but her voice faltered. "Sometimes," she admitted softly. "Sometimes I do." Ethan moved a little closer, his tone gentle. "You don't have to be. Not anymore." The words lingered in the air. Evelyn's heart skipped. For a second, she didn't know how to react. She saw sincerity in his eyes, not pity, not confusion, just care. a deep, pure affection that came from a place of understanding. She smiled weakly, trying to deflect the intensity of the moment. "You sound so grown up," she said with a nervous chuckle. "When did that happen?" He laughed too, but there was still emotion in his gaze. "I guess life does that to you." Silence fell again. The warmth of the fire spread through the room. Evelyn realized how safe she felt sitting there with him. It wasn't about attraction, it was about connection. He reminded her of everything she missed: laughter, conversation, the comfort of knowing someone was nearby. Then suddenly the lights flickered and went out. A small power cut. The room went dim, lit only by the fire. Ethan stood up to check the fuse box, but Evelyn told him to leave it. "It's fine. The fire's enough for now." They sat closer, the light of the flames dancing across their faces. Evelyn felt her heart beating faster. It wasn't love in the romantic sense, it was something gentler, something she didn't want to name. Ethan spoke again, his voice low but steady. "Aunt Evelyn, I just want you to know how much this means to me. Being here. I don't think I've said it enough." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "You don't have to say it. I can see it." He hesitated, then added, "I just don't want you to think I take you for granted. You've done more for me than anyone ever has." Evelyn tried to smile, but her emotions were overflowing. "You're family, Ethan. That's what family does." He nodded slowly. "Still, I want to be there for you, too. You don't have to be the only one who cares." His words hit her deeply. She looked down at her hands, struggling to keep her composure. For years, she had carried everyone else's weight, her brother's memory, her parents' expectations, her own loneliness. Hearing someone say they wanted to care for her felt almost unreal. When she finally looked up, Ethan's gaze was still on her, kind, steady, and full of understanding. It was an innocent look, but it made her heart ache in the quietest way. She smiled softly. "You should get some rest," she said, her voice gentle but trembling slightly. "It's been a long day." He nodded, still holding her gaze. "Good night, Aunt Evelyn. Good night, Ethan." When he left the room, Evelyn stayed by the fire, staring at the flickering flames. Her heart felt heavy, but alive. She hadn't done anything wrong, yet she couldn't deny what she felt: a deep, emotional bond that both comforted and frightened her as she watched the fire fade. She whispered to herself, "What's happening to me?" She didn't know the answer. All she knew was that the lines between family and friendship, comfort and closeness, had started to blur. That night, she stood by her window again, looking out at the rain. Her reflection stared back at her, older, wiser, but suddenly awake in a way she hadn't been in years. Something inside her had changed forever, and she could feel that the next moment they shared would reveal just how deep that change truly went. Morning sunlight streamed softly through the curtains of Evelyn's living room, painting golden streaks across the wooden floor. The fire from last night had gone out, but its warmth seemed to linger in the air. Evelyn stood by the kitchen counter, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. Her heart still carried the weight of the conversation she had shared with Ethan by the fireplace. The closeness, the honesty, the gentle way he had looked at her, it had all felt so real. So human, yet so hard to explain. When Ethan entered the room, dressed neatly and holding his phone, Evelyn noticed something different about him. He seemed brighter, more confident, as if something inside him had settled. "Morning," he said, with his usual smile. "I've got some news." Evelyn set down her mug. "Good news, I hope." He nodded. "I found an apartment. It's small, but close to work. I can move in this weekend." For a moment, Evelyn's heart sank. She had known this day would come, but hearing it made her chest tighten. "That's wonderful," she said, forcing a smile. "I'm happy for you," he replied softly. "But I'll miss being here. You've made it feel like home." Evelyn laughed lightly to hide the ache inside her. "You'll have your own space now. That's how it should be. You're starting a new chapter." He leaned against the counter, looking at her carefully. "You've helped me more than you realize. These few weeks changed a lot for me." She met his eyes for a moment, then looked away. "Maybe they changed me too." she admitted quietly. The rest of the morning passed in simple routines, laundry, packing boxes, and small talk. But everything felt different. Every word carried unspoken emotions. Every silence felt like a goodbye waiting to happen that afternoon. As Ethan packed his last bag, Evelyn helped him fold clothes. Their hands brushed once and both paused. The air grew still. She smiled quickly to ease the tension. "You'll need to buy a few more shirts. These look like they've survived college." Ethan laughed, but his voice was softer than usual. "You always notice everything." "I'm just used to taking care of people," she said. He looked at her, his tone serious. "Who takes care of you?" The same question again. It struck her heart like it did before. She wanted to say no one, but instead she smiled faintly. "I manage." Ethan zipped up his bag and sighed. "You don't have to manage alone forever." Evelyn looked at him, her expression tender but cautious. "You're sweet, Ethan, but I've lived long enough to know that everyone eventually moves on. That's how life works." He hesitated, wanting to say something more, but stopped himself. Maybe he knew that certain feelings were better left unspoken. When the taxi arrived to take him to his new apartment, Evelyn walked him to the door. The autumn wind brushed through her hair, and the leaves outside danced in soft motion. Ethan turned to her before stepping out. "I'll visit often," he promised. "You're not getting rid of me that easily." She smiled, trying to hide the emotion building behind her calm face. "You better. Or I'll hunt you down with homemade soup and advice you didn't ask for." They both laughed, but their laughter carried something bittersweet. He reached out and hugged her, a simple, warm hug that lasted just a second too long. She could feel the steadiness of his heartbeat and the quiet sincerity in his touch. "Thank you for everything," she said softly against her shoulder. "For giving me more than a place to stay, for giving me peace." Her eyes glistened as she whispered, "You gave me peace too, Ethan." When he finally stepped away and closed the door behind him, the silence that followed was heavy, almost painful. Evelyn stood still for a long moment, her hand resting on the doorknob. It felt as though the air itself had changed. She walked to the window and watched the taxi drive away, her heart quietly breaking, yet swelling with pride. She had seen him come in, lost and uncertain, and now he was leaving stronger, ready to face life again. That was enough, she told herself. That was love in its purest form, selfish and quiet. Days passed, and the house returned to its usual calm. The kettle whistled, the rain came and went, and evenings were once again silent. But Evelyn was different now. She didn't feel as lonely as before. Ethan's presence had reminded her that life still had warmth to offer, even in unexpected ways. Sometimes she found herself smiling at small things, like an extra coffee mug on the counter or a towel he had left behind. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was gratitude. One Saturday, a week after he moved out, Ethan showed up unannounced. He was holding a small bouquet of yellow tulips. "Thought I'd stop by," he said cheerfully. Evelyn blinked, surprised. "Ethan, you didn't have to bring flowers. It reminded me of you," he said. "Bright but calm. Kind of like sunshine that doesn't need to show off." She laughed softly. "You always had a poetic way of saying things." They spent the afternoon talking, catching up on his new place and work. The bond between them was the same, strong, honest, and full of care. Nothing had crossed the line. And yet the emotional connection felt deeper than ever. Before leaving that evening, Ethan said quietly, "You know, I was nervous about moving here. I thought I'd be alone. But now I know I'll never really be alone. You're here." Evelyn smiled, her voice soft. "And you'll always have a home here, Ethan. Always." After he left, Evelyn sat by the window again, watching the sunset turn the sky gold and pink. She felt peace wash over her. What had happened between them wasn't about forbidden feelings or confusion. It was about rediscovering human closeness after years of silence. Ethan had given her something she didn't know she needed. A reminder that her heart still worked, that kindness could heal both ways. As the light faded, she whispered to herself, "Love isn't always what we think it is." Sometimes it's just the quiet promise that someone will remember you. In the days that followed, Evelyn returned to her normal life, but nothing felt quite the same. She started painting again, something she hadn't done in years. She cooked for herself with care, listened to music, and smiled more often. Ethan visited every weekend, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes just stories about his new job. Each visit filled her house with laughter and warmth. There were no hidden meanings. No regrets, just the calm understanding of two people who cared deeply for one another. Evelyn had learned that love doesn't always have to be romantic to be powerful. It could exist in the quiet moments, the shared smiles, and the kindness that lingers long after someone leaves. On one of his last visits before winter, Ethan looked around her house and said, "It feels brighter in here now." "Ah!" Evelyn chuckled. "Maybe it's because you finally fixed that old lamp." He shook his head with a grin. "No, it's you. You're lighter." And for the first time in many years, she realized he was right. The loneliness had faded. In its place was something gentler, peace, gratitude, and the kind of love that asked for nothing in return. Evelyn stood by the window that night, watching the rain fall softly again. The world outside was quiet, but inside, her heart was full. Sometimes life doesn't give us grand love stories, it gives us small, tender moments that heal us from the inside out. And that was exactly what had happened between her and Ethan. Not a scandal, not a secret, just two hearts learning quietly and honestly how to care again.